There is a map from 1573 that shows the region we now call the Empty Quarter, the largest desert in Arabia. 650,000 square kilometers, almost completely uninhabited. On that map, the same region is the most densely populated area on the entire Arabian Peninsula. City after city, tower after tower, hundreds of place names, and not one of those names appears in any history book anywhere. The Wikipedia page for Rab al-Hali, the Empty Quarter, has exactly one paragraph about its history. The summary goes something like this. There were caravan routes crossing the region until around 300 AD. Then, nothing. End of paragraph. End of history. That's it. No explanation of what came before, no explanation of what happened, no mention of who lived there, what they built, or where they went. But when you look at maps from the 1500s, the 1600s, and the 1700s, the picture is completely different. And there is a very specific window of time between the last map showing a populated, fertile Arabia and the first map showing empty desert. That window is between 1730 and 1740. 10 years, from cities to sand, with no explanation offered anywhere in the official record. To everyone who keeps coming back, a genuine thank you. It really does mean a lot. As always, everything I share here is the best of what I've been able to find and piece together. If something sits differently with what you know, please don't take it personally, and neither will I. Think of me as someone who reads a lot, but certainly hasn't read everything. Nothing I present here is the final word. Evidence changes, understanding shifts. I'd far rather be honestly uncertain than confidently wrong. Now, let's go to Arabia. In 1573, a cartographer named Abraham Ortelius produced a detailed map of the Arabian Peninsula. It was not a rough sketch or a speculative drawing. Ortelius was one of the most respected mapmakers of his era. His work was considered authoritative across Europe. On his map, zoom into the region that is today called the Empty Quarter. What you see is not empty at all. It is packed. Cities with towers and spires, drawn in the same detail as every other populated area on the map. Dozens of settlements labeled with names. Some of those names sound familiar. Mirbat, Rada, place names that still exist in the region today. But many of them are unrecognizable to modern Arabic speakers. Names like Korks, Seir, Brun, Jolak, Irmin, El Fergich, Gubalaman. Several of those names linguists have noted appear to be ancient German in origin, not Arabic at all. Who were the people who lived in those cities and spoke a language that sounds nothing like the Arabic of the region today? Nobody in the official historical record seems to be asking that question. There is another map claimed to be from 1525 that adds another layer. The southern portion of Arabia on this map is labeled not in Arabic, but in Latin. The word used is Felix, meaning happy, or prosperous, or fertile. The kingdom of Saba, the queen of Sheba's realm, in what is now Yemen, is clearly labeled. But here's the strange part. Mecca, which is officially said to have existed since at least the year 600 AD, does not appear on this map at all. Either this map is significantly older than claimed, or Mecca is significantly newer than we are told. One of those things has to be true. By 1725, the map still shows settlements in southern Arabia, but fewer than in the 1500s. By 1780, the region is labeled for the first time as arid desert. The cities are gone, the names have vanished, and the history books record nothing about what happened between those two dates. Spend an hour on Google Earth over the Empty Quarter and something becomes clear very quickly. This desert is not empty. Perfectly straight lines run for hundreds of miles beneath the sand, not curving, not breaking, cutting through the terrain in the same way the ancient grid systems of Kazakhstan and Siberia do. Circles too, perfect, geometric, with no natural explanation. Outlines of subsurface structures visible from above, their shapes too irregular to be geological formations. In one area, an enormous X is carved into the landscape, visible only from above, with no modern roads connecting to it, no towns nearby, no obvious reason for it to exist. There is a place called Rida in the current geography of the region. Its location corresponds almost exactly to a city labeled Rada on the 1573 map. The name survived. The city did not, at least not above ground. But the most telling detail is what Google has chosen to blur. Following what appeared to be an ancient road across the northern part of the empty quarter, the road simply ends, not because the terrain changes, not because the road disappears, but because Google's imagery goes deliberately blurry. The kind of blur that is applied by choice, not produced by distance or cloud cover. If the empty quarter is empty, what exactly is there to hide? Look at the shape of the Rab el Khali from above, specifically its northern boundary. The desert forms a long, specific shape that corresponds almost perfectly with the locations of 7 cities shown on the old maps, from a city called Lakach to one called Sachara. The desert doesn't spread randomly. It follows the outline of the highest ancient population density. That is not how deserts form naturally. Sand dunes and arid regions develop based on wind patterns, rainfall, and geography. They do not form in shapes that mirror the exact footprints of ancient cities. There are also patterns in the Google imagery that are harder to explain. One area shows lines radiating outward from a central point, like the pattern left by a massive explosion. Another area shows a branching pattern that engineers and physicists recognize as a Lichtenberg figure, the kind of mark left when a material is subjected to an extreme high-voltage electrical discharge. Lichtenberg figures do not appear in nature from erosion or wind. They appear when something generates an enormous electrical event at a specific location. Whether this represents the remnants of some kind of advanced weaponry, a natural catastrophe of a type we do not yet understand, or something else entirely, the patterns are there, and nature did not make them. Some of what was built in ancient Arabia survived, or at least survived long enough to be documented. Mada'in Salih is a site in northwestern Arabia containing structures carved directly into rock faces at a scale and with a precision that is difficult to attribute to basic hand tools. The detailing is intricate. The scale is enormous. Whatever civilization produced these was not primitive. The Shuaib caves show a similar level of deliberate, skilled construction embedded into natural rock. And then there is Al-Nasla, a massive boulder split perfectly down the middle with a cut so flat, so clean, and so precise that geologists who have studied it have not been able to agree on a natural process that would produce it. The cut face is smoother than most machined surfaces. Nature does not produce edges like that. The Quran itself references a city called Iram, described as having pillars of extraordinary size, unmatched anywhere else on earth, built by a people of great stature. The text says it was destroyed as a punishment for the corruption of its people. The same theme appears in ancient texts from cultures across the world: grand civilizations, grand structures, and then a sudden catastrophic end described as divine punishment. We find that pattern in Arabia. We find it in Siberia. We find it in Kazakhstan. We find it wherever the old maps show cities that the modern maps replace with wilderness. Now to the part that is hardest to look away from. The latest map found showing a populated, fertile southern Arabia with cities and settlements dates to 1730. The earliest map found showing the region as arid desert dates to 1740. 10 years. That is the window. A thriving landscape with dozens of cities, rivers, lakes, trade routes, and people, reduced to one of the most inhospitable deserts on Earth in less than a decade. With no war recorded, no famine documented, no plague mentioned, no explanation offered anywhere in the official historical record. And then look at what happened immediately after. In 1727, 3 years before the last populated map, the Al Saud family began consolidating power in Central Arabia. By 1744, Mohammed bin Saud had joined forces with the religious leader Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, establishing the movement and the political structure that controls the Arabian Peninsula to this day. Before this period, dozens of cities, hundreds of towns, a multilingual population with names that don't sound Arabic, a fertile landscape confirmed by multiple independent cartographers from different countries across 2 centuries. After this period, desert. A new ruling family, a new religious framework, and a historical record that begins at 1744 and says almost nothing about what preceded it. We had seen this pattern before, on this channel. Tartaria, one of the most documented empires on European maps, replaced by frozen Siberia. Kazakhstan, shown as densely populated on old maps, now described as a land of ancient nomads. Irkutsk, with its grand stone buildings and no construction records. Africa, described in ancient sources as a continent of kingdoms and cities, reframed as an unknown wilderness. All of it collapses in the same narrow window, the 1700s into the early 1800s. Arabia is not the exception. It is the same story, told in sand instead of ice. Here is what the maps, the Google imagery, the surviving structures, and the timeline actually give us. A fertile, densely populated region of Arabia, confirmed by dozens of independent maps from cartographers across Europe spanning 2 centuries, disappeared from the record in the space of roughly 10 years. No explanation was ever recorded. No cause was ever documented. The history books begin after the desert was already there and say almost nothing about what preceded it. Under 650,000 square kilometers of sand, there are grid lines, perfect circles, subsurface outlines, and at least one area that Google has chosen to blur from public view. The shapes in the landscape include patterns that match high-energy electrical discharge events, not natural erosion. The civilization that built Mada'in Saleh, Al-Nasla, and the cities on those 1573 maps was not primitive. It was sophisticated enough to leave structures that still confound researchers today. And its name, its language, and its history have been almost entirely removed from the record. Who built those cities? What happened between 1730 and 1740? What is still buried under that sand? And who decided we should not be able to see it clearly on a map? I don't have those answers, but I think they are worth asking. Drop what you think in the comments. I read every one. If this connected something for you, share it. And go check out the Kazakhstan and Siberia videos on this channel, because what happened there and what happened here are the same story told in different landscapes.